Tundra Media presents The Mayor Helps, with the Mayor of Victoria, British Columbia, Lisa Helps. Have your say. Send your questions and comments to themayorhelps.com. They could be included in next week's
Victoria
show.
Businesses to know that we're working.
And now, here's your host, from beautiful Victoria, British Columbia, Dave Hatt.
Well, welcome to the Mayor Helps, and we're here with Mayor Lisa Helps, and we're in our segment where we're going to talk about the state of the city here in Victoria, BC. It's summertime; things should be slamma-jamma busy, and it's interesting to me that we're in the age of COVID, and what's happening right now. Tourism is supposed to be virtually shut down. Now we do have Canadians that are coming, and I saw a lot of license plates from Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba over the weekend, and social distancing may or may not be happening. So Mayor Helps, welcome to the show. How are you doing? Let's maybe chat about that.
Sure, that's a really good thing to chat about. I think, one good thing about the way the pandemic has been handled in Canada is that the message has been the same, whether you're in PEI or Manitoba or British Columbia, which is wash your hands, keep your distances, stay in your bubbles, wear a mask inside if you can't keep those distances. So even as people move across the country, the message and the instructions are the same. I think, so certainly we are very happy to have people visiting from across the country. We don't have any international visitors or any visitors from the United States this year, and that is being felt very strongly by our local businesses here. And I think, sometimes I'll, like, oh, look, there's a group of people, they're too close, but it might be a family who's in a bubble or an extended family who's in a bubble. One of the observations that some people have made to me is that, after a few drinks are had, the social distances seem to disappear a bit. And I think that is a real concern. So yeah, on balance, I think things are as good as they can be here in Victoria this summer. I too have been out and about, and one of the things, and we might have talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that's really so inspiring to me is how the business community, the local businesses, have seized on the city's Build Back Victoria program. So our staff put forward some ideas about patios and flex spaces, and they're really, really being taken up. I was having lunch on a patio yesterday, lunch meeting, and a drill or a saw was out constructing a new patio right beside that restaurant. So there's certainly, I think people are making the best of a very difficult situation.
I think you're right. And I think on the last note is the feedback that I get from everybody. It's been unanimous and universal is they love the patios. It makes the city instantly became more metropolitan, more European, more welcoming, a happier place, if you will. How's that for an interesting segue?
Yeah, that's a good one for sure.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Helps. I appreciate it. And let's chat on the other side. Okay.
See you on the other side.
Sure.
Have your say. Send your questions and comments to themayorhelps.com. They could be included in next week's show.
Welcome to our Ask the Mayor portion of the Mayor Helps this week. And today we've got Mike Sidhu. And I know Mike through personal connections through business networking, but I also know him to be a person who has a very strong opinions politically. So this should be good. Mike, meet Mayor Lisa Helps and go ahead and ask your question.
Good morning. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Mayor Helps. Thank you so much for making yourself available. Unfortunately, 5 minutes is not going to do anything that I think if we put ourselves between two ferns like Zach Galifianakis would do. I would love to do that at some point. That would be awesome. But thank you so much for your time. I've been watching. I've been a citizen of Victoria for 47 years. And have seen the city grow. And one of the things in your inaugural address in your reelection, November 2018, was which I watched, and I was really cool because you approached council, you talked about what they loved about Victoria, and the responses were things like they love the environment, the quiet streets, the town that's growing into a small city, small business, how easy it is to get around. And you stated that your job in City Hall was to nurture and steward these issues. But one of these things that's going on was the reducing homelessness and increasing affordable housing in the area. So I want to really focus in on affordable housing. And obviously COVID-19 has shifted the way that we do and think about big projects, small projects. Obviously, the state of Victoria is going through a concern about tax revenue. We're not seeing, obviously, the 3.9 million tourists this year, that's an industry that's responsible to contributing $647 million to the economy. And there's no conferences going on at the conference center. And I noticed that on the budget of the state of Victoria, that contributes to about $7.5 million of direct revenue. Now, we've got some things going on nationally, federally, fiscal and monetary stimulus that combined with the negative supply shock, people aren't spending their money on a lot of things. Economists are warning of inflation in asset prices. And one of those things is housing prices that is affected by fiscal and monetary stimulus. Now, we all know from basic economics that one of the solutions to combating higher prices is greater supply. Lowering rents is quite simple as offering more supply. I was reading something from the Goodman report, Mark Goodman and Cynthia Jagger out of Vancouver, who said that the quickest way to increase supply is to eliminate approvals for developments that already conform to an OCP. And then I've noticed that Victoria has had its increasing share of development. There seems to be a few cranes going on and some things that are coming up with review of the OCP, especially in the around the Fernwood area, which I think increasing supply is always a good thing. So my question, I have two questions, but one is, how has COVID shifted the idea of the city providing affordable housing? When you look at what alternatives are available, what alternatives have been considered. I know Langford, back about 10, 15 years ago when I was a mortgage lender, there was a lot of great deal about their affordable housing, which seemed to has worked. So I'd love your comments on affordable housing and how COVID has changed the city's direction with that.
So yeah, first of all, the city doesn't provide affordable housing per se. So we don't have a housing corporation. We don't build affordable housing. But what we do are a number of things. We're a shareholder through the CRD in the Capital Regional Housing Corporation, which I'm actually the president of with another hat on. And that the CRHC, the Capital Regional Housing Corporation, has hundreds of units in construction and process right now. So when I took over as chair, we had about 1,300 units. By the end of this year, we'll be up to 1,700 with another probably close to 1,000 to come over the next couple of years. So that's really exciting. So that's a regional effort, but City of Victoria participates. Part of what's funding that is another project that was initiated by a motion from City Council to get the region to come together and put in what was originally $30 million. It's now up to $40 million. And again, that's regionally. The region's put in $40 million. That's been matched by the federal and provincial governments. So we've got $120 million to build close to 2,000 units of housing. 400 of those will be at shelter rates, so rent at $375 a month, which is what people on income assistance can earn. And then the rest will be some rent geared to income and some at just below market rates. And the neat thing about that project, the Regional Housing First program, is that the higher rents subsidize the lower rents, so there's no need for ongoing government subsidy of the buildings, which is a really innovative approach. And then the other way that there are two other ways that the city contributes to affordable housing. One is by consolidating land. So there's a lot of land that's kind of co-owned or partially owned by the school district and the city going back decades. And the last couple of years, we've consolidated two parcels at the Burnside area, the Burnside School. That's going to result in 88 units of affordable housing. And then another one right behind Vic High, a land swap between the school district and the city and involvement of the Capital Regional Housing Corp. That's going to result in 155 units. And then we also use our own land where possible. So we're building a new fire hall on Johnson Street, and we've given the air parcel above to Pacifica Housing that's funded through BC Housing to build 130 units of affordable housing right in the downtown. And then finally, we've recently purchased land for the purpose of building affordable housing as well. So I think COVID hasn't thrown a wrench into things in terms of that all of those projects are still moving forward. In fact, probably faster than ever. What COVID has done, not only for the city, but across the country, is, just like, only 2 people can now go into a store at once rather than the previous 6. So too with shelters, right? So shelters that previously could house 50 people can now only house 25. And someone had to make the difficult decision. It wasn't the city, but the shelter providers back in March to say, okay, you 25, out you go. And so what we're seeing is a surge in pandemic-related homelessness in Victoria and across the country for those very reasons, which means we need to double down our efforts to keep going with building housing and with supporting the building of housing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like there's quite a lot of things going on from a provincial level that's helping to kind of fund that need for affordable housing. Of course, one may argue that that's all public money anyway, so it's kind of 6 of one, half does the other in terms of where the revenue is coming. Has there been any kind of private-public partnerships that have been sought after, were considered in that regard, not just in the facilitation of the construction, but in the funding or putting the onus on developers really to create that additional supply in any development that they're bringing to council?
It's a great question. Yes, somewhat. So we do have an inclusionary housing policy that, depending on where the building is in the city and how many units, requires up to 20% of the units to be affordable to some degree. And what we've seen is the private sector being really creative. And one of the best projects in this instance, and it's affordable home ownership, which again is really important, right? It's so if we can get people to out of the rental market into the condo market, that then creates, as you said earlier, more supply and more space rather than the rental market. So Dave Chard has done 2 projects now. The first is under construction. It's called the Vivid on Johnson, and that building is 100% affordable home ownership. So it's 10 to 15% below market. And the interesting thing about that building, and that's all private money. I mean, he got financing from BC Housing, but the money is all private sector. And most of the people, I think 60% of the people who have bought into that building, which is entirely pre-sold, are people who are moving out of the local rental market. He's doing another project on Cook, Johnson, and Yates, 2 buildings there. And again, 36 or 44%, can't remember, but a significant portion of that whole development is again affordable home ownership, which helps to put to ease on the rental market. So another one, that just was announced a couple of weeks ago is Arise Developments has partnered with BC Housing, and they're offering affordable housing at their project on 5th Street. So when the financing mechanisms are there for the private sector through BC Housing, I think it makes it a lot easier. So certainly there's room for private sector to play a role as well.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the call. I know this is clearly a conversation that could go on for a while. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to learn. But I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Let's have Mike back, because he said he had a second question. So maybe when we're hard up one day for an Ask the Mayor participant, Mike will get back to you.
I'd be glad to participate.
That'd be great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Have your say. Send your questions and comments to themayorhelps.com. They could be included in next week's show. And now, Mayor Lisa Helps sits down with this week's special guest.
Welcome to the Mayor Helps, and this is a segment where we get to meet somebody who's an industry leader, a community leader, really anywhere across North America. And today we've got Kelly Terbasket, and she is the founder of Indigenize. And there's a lot to discuss and a lot to talk to with Kelly. So Indigenize, it looks like you have been trying to develop holistic teaching systems to decolonize Indigenous minds. And that seems like a large statement, Kelly. So welcome to the show. And let's maybe learn a lot more about your organization. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So Kelly, there's quite a long story, and you mentioned that you're very talkative. So let's take advantage of that. Maybe you could explain how you came about starting Indigenize and sort of the Coles Notes version, please.
Okay, the Coles Notes version. My background is in social work, and so for my whole career, I've been working in First Nations communities with, empowering children and families. And I've worked a lot with a program called Head Start. And Head Start is to support Indigenous children and families in leveraging them to a place that when they do enter the school system, they won't be so far behind as the social determinants of health, as we know, show. And so this program really focuses on culture and language. And one of the things I noticed when I was delivering the Head Start program and working throughout BC is that there was a huge barriers that were in the way of this very important and significant program in being successful as it could be. And that was our relationships with each other and the impacts of colonization that disrupted those values that we had in place since time immemorial that have supported us in our sustainability, not only as peoples and communities, but in our relationship with the land and the stewardship of all our relations. No, I
was going to stop you there, because I've heard it's a sensitive subject, and it's something that I have heard. I grew up in Edmonton, and I spent some time working downtown Edmonton, and I was a nighttime job, so I got to see, a lot of people that were intoxicated. And in the area I was, it was close to an area where there was a lot at that time of homeless First Nations people, and so I know from being this, very naive, truly ignorant to the world, back then, a teenager, to listening to people's opinions about First Nations and about, because you'd mentioned about how the impact of colonization. And can I ask you to share your viewpoints on when people say, yeah, but you know what, we're giving all kinds of money, the government's giving all kinds of money, can't we just move on? And I know that's a hugely sensitive subject, but I did want to ask you specifically about it, because I would love to hear your opinion and when you hear when those comments are made, I know what I feel now, but what are your thoughts on it?
Well, the simple question is, are they working? So when I look at the programs, and this is the point I was going to make, is that we're not getting to the root of the problem. In a lot of the programs that are federally and provincially funded, we're hitting the top of the iceberg. We're focusing on the issues, whether it's homelessness or whether it's addictions, mental health, child welfare, and we're not moving into the prevention. You just have to look at the child welfare stats. They're getting higher and higher. And so what is not working? We're not getting to the root of the problem, which is the internalized systemic racism and oppression that has deeply disrupted our relationships to each other and to ourselves. And so one of the things that we focus on in our programs is getting to a place of supporting our youth and supporting our health workers and our community members to feel hope, to feel like we can make a difference, a sense of self-determination, self-agency, and that we can have control over our lives and make a better future for ourselves. That's like really down deep into the root of the issues. And if you don't have create a sense of possibilities that for the future of that we can unite and work together, then why are we going to that's where people end up having, moving into addictions and suicide. And why the stats are not going down. So I feel like, in a nutshell, basically we're not getting to the root of the problems that could actually turn these statistics around.
And so this is so thrilling to get to speak with you, because I think, you know, in addition to everything that you've said about, you know, in terms of Indigenous communities, there's also, and this has come through very clearly in the last little while, there's also systemic racism in Canadian society. So we have our own unlearning and our own work to do, and that's not your work, that's our work. But in terms of Indigenized, so how do you do this work? How do you work with youth, and what are, you know, and communities, and what does it feel like, and what's it like when that light bulb goes on, when they see, okay, right, you know, I have pride as an Indigenous person, and this is my rich history, and what are those, I guess, two questions, you know, how do you do it? Like, what's your, I guess, methodology? And then what are those moments like for you and for communities when people have those eyes and hearts lighting up?
Well, our methodologies are a lot to do with utilizing the arts and utilizing a strength-based approach to working with youth. So what we do is we scaffold and we give them opportunity to move through their fears and their self-limitations. And we do that in a very gentle and encouraging way. And so you'll start off, it's just so rewarding to see a youth come to our camp, our 7-day camp. And in the beginning, they're like so shy, and you can see it in their body, how they feel about themselves. By the end of the 7 days, they're up there singing and drumming and speaking and sharing about themselves. And it's just like such an amazing transformation. And our, you know, I really believe that a lot of the success that we have is because we are reconnecting our young people to not only their culture and their teachings and to feel that pride, but to the land. When we say all our relations, a lot of people think we're talking about humans only. We're not. We're talking about all of our relations, all the land, all our ancestors, everything that exists we're all interconnected. And so when we reconnect youth to the land, we're expanding the possibilities for them to feel nurtured and held and connected and not so alone.
So how does it in 2020, so taking into account the connection to the land and historical things that have happened in terms of connecting to community, connecting to ancestry, when you bring it forward to 2020, and keeping with the youth, are you still there, Kelly? There you go.
Yeah.
In keeping with the youth, what is it that they're keying in on? And this is kind of a loaded question, because I saw on your website, you mentioned about a connection with hip hop. And so it brings to mind an artist like Nipsey Hussle, where I do another podcast, and my co-host in another podcast really turned me on to Nipsey. And it's interesting what he did with his communities. He found a way to work sort of kind of within the system. But certainly once he hit a certain degree of success, he really started to give back to the community in very tangible ways. So how is it manifesting, and what are kids wanting to do these days?
Well, I'm just going to back up a little bit. Thank you for that question. What I noticed when I ran programs in my own community and nation, like checking out our land and connecting youth with our cultural knowledge keepers and elders, is that the disconnect, the result of the fragmentation of relationships, has been that our youth don't sit and listen the way they could in the way that we did prior to contact. And our elders are frustrated. It's like, we have this important knowledge. You need to sit there and listen and learn in this way. And so I see us as a bridge by using things like hip hop and using the arts, theater, song, all the different ways that we can express ourselves and connect to the transference of the knowledge. And so, yeah, using fun things like hip hop, a lot of our facilitators that we bring into our camps have a background in, you know, the youth really think they're cool and hip, and they connect to the youth. And it's a bridge. The arts are a bridge to ensure that transference happens of knowledge.
What about business? Do you work with youth to talk to them about becoming entrepreneurs and starting their own businesses? Is that ever a discussion that's brought up? Do you have a program that handles that?
Definitely. One of the things that happens in our camps is that we have like mentors from a variety of careers, and a big part of our goal is to support youth in identifying their own dreams and passions and their talents. In our culture, all Indigenous cultures have ways that we connect our young people to what their gifts are and their purpose. So in a way, our camps are a modern day way of doing that rite of passage. Sorry, my phone keeps ringing. So we're like, I believe culture evolves, and culture can look different as we go through time. And the resiliency of culture are the values. So we bring those Indigenous values into our camps, and it might look different.
So whereas, in pre-contact days, the youth would be sitting at the feet of the elders, maybe sometimes they still do that, but what you're saying is you're using things that youth are already kind of connecting with as a way to transfer that knowledge. Yeah.
Like through the lens of a video camera, or through a paintbrush, or it's a different way to connect to who they are and strengthen that self-expression.
It's powerful to be able to connect the message that you want to share with young people with the modern technology, because clearly we're all inundated with everything that's online, and so our culture collectively is the internet. I mean, and it's to be able to make sure that we carve out our own identity and maintain a connection to our own past, and clearly with Indigenous people, it's critical, because it was removed, forcibly taken from them. So yeah, it's quite amazing. So are there any other programs that you're working on right now? Like what's happening right now when you're dealing with COVID? How has that changed how you're facilitating?
Well, I hate to say this out loud, but COVID has actually been a blessing in disguise for our organization, because we haven't had time. In the last 7 years since we started, we just hit the ground running. We've been delivering programs so much so that we didn't have time to write our curriculum and to get some of those foundational pieces in place so that we can spread further to more communities. So we've been busy writing and developing. So what we have coming up is, like, I really believe that in order to return children to the center of the community, as you often hear in Indigenous communities, that our children are our future and the children are at the center, that we need to strengthen the relationships of the adults with the youth and with the children. And so what our trainings are about is reconnecting the adults as well, the decolonizing and indigenizing work that we do with the youth in the camps. We also are doing with the adults. So we have leadership trainings, and we have programs through our local college here in the Okanagan, like a train the trainers, as well as we have partnerships with the university, UBC, and with the local school districts. So we're bringing our work into the schools for the first time. So what we do in our camps, we're going to start doing in the school system.
Kelly, I think we're getting close to our time together, but I did want to ask you one last question. It's a bit of a personal question, so you can not answer it if you don't want to. But I'm just curious, and obviously we're in very different situations, but I get asked this sometimes myself as the mayor. But for yourself, what kind of work did you need to do, or do you need to do, kind of with yourself, to be able to deliver these programs for youth in a genuine way?
I've had to decolonize. I'm still decolonizing myself and indigenizing. It's an ongoing healing of through the layers of shame and wounds of, being a mixed heritage person has deeply impacted my identity and my self-esteem and confidence and how I move through the world. So I have to do that inner work ongoing in order to show up in the best way I can and connect with the youth and with the facilitation with the trainings that I do. So you can't be a facilitator of change, a champion of change, if you're not doing your own inner work.
Yeah, thanks. That's what I thought you would say, and I just wanted to. You just have a very really genuine spirit, and thanks for having the courage to share that answer, because I think sometimes we just focus, particularly people in leadership positions, focus too much on the work that we're delivering without looking at the work behind the work, whatever that work might be. So yeah, thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate your time, and thank you for coming on. It's been terrific having you on. And offline, I've got a couple things that I can share with you that tools in your shed that you can potentially use. So I'll reach out to you after. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mayor Helps on Tundra Media. If you enjoyed the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And visit themayorhelps.com to submit your questions to the show.